You asked for this, not in the casual and passing way of someone who mentions wanting the truth in the way people sometimes mention it without the full weight of actually meaning it, in the complete and receiving form of someone who is genuinely ready to hear what the truth contains when it arrives in the full and unfiltered form of what actually happened and what it meant and why it happened the way it happened, rather than the softened and managed form that partial truths take when the full form would be too much for the person receiving it to hold all at once. But in the specific and serious way of someone who has been in the not knowing for long enough that the not knowing has become more uncomfortable than the knowing would be. Even if the knowing is painful, in the specific and arriving form of the truth you have been wanting about everything they did to you, here it is. In the full and specific and unfiltered form that you asked for, and that this reading is delivering, layer by layer, in the peeling back form of something that has more in it than the surface suggests. This reading has 4 layers. Stay for all 4, because the 4th layer is the truth that you most needed to hear and that nobody has said to you yet, in the direct and complete form that it deserves to be said in, for the specific Virgo who asked for it, which is you. Virgo, my beautiful Virgo, the truth is here, and I am going to deliver every part of it. Welcome, and stay with every word. The first layer of the truth, and this one is about what actually happened, not the version that was presented to you in the managed and shaped form that the people involved were presenting it in for their own reasons, and not the version that you constructed in the interior and private form of someone who was trying to make sense of something that was not making sense in the way it was being presented, or in the way the Virgo's own analysis was trying to make it make sense before the truth arrived to provide the sense that the presented version was not providing. What actually happened was deliberate. I want to say that first. And clearly, and without the softening language that would make the deliberateness sound like something less than deliberate, in the form that was actually what it was, which was chosen in the specific and aware form of something that the people involved knew they were doing and chose to do anyway, in the specific and deliberate way. That deliberate things are done by people who are doing them deliberately rather than accidentally or carelessly or without awareness of what they were doing and to whom they were doing it. Whew. They knew in the specific and important form of a knowing that the Virgo's own analysis has been circling around without fully landing on, in the direct and stated form, because landing on it directly would require accepting that the people involved were not acting from confusion or from their own pain, or from a misunderstanding. That would make what they did more forgivable in the retrospective form of an explanation that reduces the deliberateness into something more understandable and therefore more manageable. For the Virgo's interior, that has been trying to make sense of it in the specific and analytical form that the Virgo mind applies to everything that needs to be made sense of. They were not confused. They knew what they were doing, and they chose to do it in the deliberate and aware form of people who understood that what they were doing was going to produce a specific effect. In the specific Virgo, they were doing it to, and who chose to produce that effect. Anyway, Spirit is showing me the specific form of what the deliberateness looked like, and I want to name it in the precise way that makes this first layer of the truth land in the specific and recognized form of something accurately described rather than the approximate form that would produce only the general feeling of being seen without the specific recognition that the precise description produces. The deliberateness looked like choosing silence when speaking would have prevented what the silence was going to produce in the Virgo who needed the speaking, rather than the silence to not be in the confusion that the silence produced in the specific and interior form of someone who was trying to understand what the silence meant, rather than having the information that the speaking would have provided. Instead of the silence, that the deliberate choosing of silence made the Virgo's experience. The deliberateness looked like presenting information in the incomplete form that would lead the Virgo to the conclusion they wanted the Virgo to reach, rather than the complete form that would have led the Virgo to the accurate conclusion that the complete information would have produced if the information had been complete rather than the incomplete form that was chosen deliberately to produce the wanted conclusion in the Virgo who was being led to it by the incomplete information they were being given. And the deliberateness looked like using the specific and particular things the Virgo had shared in the trusting form of someone who was being open about who they are and what they care about and what matters to them in the intimate and personal form of someone sharing their interior with the people they trusted against the Virgo. In the specific and betraying form of taking what was shared in trust and using it in the untrusting and deliberate form of someone who received the trust and chose to use it rather than honor it in the way that trust deserves to be honored by the person it was extended to. That is the first layer of the truth, the deliberateness, named directly without the softening. That would make it less than what it was. Whew. The second layer, stay with me, Virgo, because this layer is about why they did what they did deliberately in the specific form that the first layer described, because the why is the part that the Virgo's analysis has been most occupied with in the trying to understand form of someone who needs the why, to make the what make sense in the specific and landing form of something understood rather than only witnessed in the confusing and unresolved form of something that happened without the explanation. That would make the happening make sense. The why is not complicated. I want to say that before the why is named, because complicated whys can be a form of generosity toward the people who did the deliberate things that the first layer described in the giving them a complicated reason form. That makes the deliberateness into something produced by a complex and therefore somewhat understandable interior experience that was producing the deliberate behavior from a place of something like woundedness or fear or a history that made them this way, rather than a simpler and less generous, but more accurate why. The why is fear of what the Virgo is in the specific and direct form of people who encountered the specific and particular combination of what the Virgo brings and who responded to the encountering with a deliberate behavior. The first layer described because the encountering produced in the people who encountered it the specific experience of recognizing something that was more than they wanted to be around in the present and undeniable form of what the Virgo actually is, which is extraordinary, in the specific and particular way that the word means when it is used accurately rather than as encouragement. Extraordinary things produce fear in the people who are not extraordinary in the same specific way, and who therefore feel the distance between what they are and what the extraordinary thing they are encountering is, in the uncomfortable and destabilizing form of a comparison that does not favor them, and that the deliberate behavior was an attempt to manage by reducing the extraordinary thing to something more comparable with what they were, rather than what the extraordinary thing actually was. They were trying to reduce you in the specific and deliberate form of people who needed you smaller, to feel comfortable in the space between you, and who used the specific behaviors. The first layer described to produce the reduction they needed from you in the space between you, that your actual size was making uncomfortable for the people who needed you smaller to be comfortable in. That is the second layer of the truth, the why, named directly in the simple and accurate form rather than the complicated and generous form that would make the why more forgivable, but less true. The third layer, stay with me, because this layer is the one that the first two were building toward in the accumulating and escalating form of three layers of truth that build on each other, rather than standing separately as three unconnected pieces of information about what happened and why, and what the third layer is now going to name as the most important truth of all. In the 4-layer structure of this reading, the third layer is about what the Virgo did with the deliberate behavior that was directed at them in the reducing and intended form of people who needed them smaller and who used the specific behaviors of the first layer for the specific reason of the second layer to produce the reduction they needed. The Virgo did not reduce in the specific and significant form of someone who was subjected to the full and deliberate weight of the reducing behavior and who did not become the smaller version that the reducing behavior was designed to produce from the person it was directed at, not because the Virgo was unaffected. I want to say that clearly. Before the third layer goes further, because unaffected would be inaccurate. And the truth is what this reading is for. And the truth is that the Virgo was affected in the specific and real form of someone who received the full weight of the deliberate reducing behavior and who felt it in the interior and embodied form of something that lands in a person when it is directed at them with the specific and deliberate intention of producing an effect in them. The Virgo was affected and did not reduce in the specific and extraordinary form of someone who absorbed the impact of the deliberate reducing behavior and kept being what they actually are, rather than the smaller version that the impact was intended to produce in the person it was directed at. That is extraordinary, in the specific and accurate sense of a word that is being used accurately, rather than as encouragement. Most people reduce when the full and deliberate weight of reducing behavior is directed at them by people who know what they are doing and who are doing it deliberately for the specific reason that the second layer named as the why of the deliberate behavior, the Virgo did not reduce, and the not reducing is the third layer of the truth about everything they did to you that you asked for, and that this reading is delivering in the full and specific form that the asking deserved. The fourth layer, the most personal, and the one I almost did not include because it requires saying something that the Virgo may resist receiving in the complete and unqualified form that the truth deserves from a reading that was asked to deliver. The truth about everything they did. I feel a question forming in you right now as the fourth layer arrives in the reading you have been in through all 4 of its layers. And I want to name it before it speaks in the undermining form that unaddressed questions take when they have not been met first. The question is not whether what I said is accurate. The Virgo's interior already knows that it is accurate in the specific and recognizing form of someone who has been waiting for the truth to be named in the direct form that this reading just named it in, and who is now recognizing the accuracy of the naming in the specific and landing form of the truth arriving in the form they asked for. Whew. The deeper question is this: now that I know the truth, what do I do with it? In the specific and practical form of someone who asked for the truth and has now received it, in the full and unfiltered form that the asking was asking for, and who now has to be in possession of the truth about everything they did, in the specific and known form of something that is now understood, rather than the unresolved and confusing form that it was in before this reading named it in the direct and full form that was asked for, and that has now been delivered. I want to answer that question directly without the qualifying. That would soften the answer into something more comfortable, but less true. Nothing, you do nothing with it. In the specific and releasing form of someone who asks for the truth, to be free of the not knowing, rather than to produce an action from the knowing in the responding or retaliating or confronting form of someone who now has the information and who is deciding what to do with it. In the active and directed form of an action taken in response to the truth that has just been delivered. The truth is not for them. The truth is for you, in the freeing and releasing form of something that ends the not knowing. That was more uncomfortable than the knowing would be, even in the full and unfiltered form of what this reading just delivered as the truth about everything they did that the Virgo asked for, and has now received. The freedom that the truth provides is the freedom from the not knowing, not the permission to do something, with the knowing in the responding and directed form of someone who has been given information and who is now using the information to produce an effect in the people the information is about. The truth frees you from them, not into action toward them, in the specific and away from form of someone who now has the complete picture and who can therefore stop trying to complete the incomplete picture that the not knowing was making them complete. In the interior and analytical form of a Virgo mind, that keeps working on things that are still incomplete until they are complete and can then be set down in the finished and no longer requiring analysis form of something understood. The picture is now complete. Set it down in the releasing form of something that no longer needs the analysis, because the analysis has produced the complete picture in the form the Virgo asked for, and that this reading has just delivered in the 4 layers of what was asked for and is now known. I want to give you something. Before this closes, in the permission form that the truth finally knowing Virgo specifically needs permission to trust your perception from this moment forward in the specific and full form of someone who has just had their perception confirmed as accurate by the truth that this reading delivered in the full and unfiltered form that was asked for, and that matched what the Virgo's perception had been circling around without fully trusting in the specific and self-doubting form of a perception that was accurate, but that the Virgo was not fully trusting in the fair-minded and generous form of someone who was giving the people involved more benefit of the doubt than the truth warranted. Trust your perception, Virgo. It was right about all of it in the specific and complete form of the 4 layers of truth that this reading just delivered about everything they did, that you asked for the truth about, and that your perception had already been reading accurately before the reading confirmed what the perception already knew. You are protected and vindicated and in possession of the truth in the complete and picture finished form of something that the Virgo's mind can now set down, having completed the picture in the 4 layers that this reading delivered for the specific Virgo who asked for the truth about everything they did and who just received it in the here it is form of the second and third words of this reading that are now the last words to here it is. Beautiful Virgo, you asked, and now you know. Set it down and trust yourself from here forward